Guys, direct mail does not work anymore. That's the lie that keeps investors broke. The one that they keep telling themselves. Wow, the smart investors out there, the real operators are pulling a 4 to 6x ROI out of the mailbox. So if you are scaling and still relying on text blasts and cold calling alone, you are absolutely leaking deals. Today's guest, Adam Charlton from REI Print Mail, has the proof that mailbox marketing is not only alive, it's absolutely crushing it for the investors who are smart enough to use it. From AI-powered lists to trained phone teams that follow up and convert, this is the system that turns inconsistent hustle into predictable deal flow. If you ignore it, you're going to keep grinding and you're not going to have the success you want. So lock in and start printing profits. Welcome to the Closers Club, where real investors come and build real businesses and close real deals. So let's get right into it. Adam, thank you so much for coming on. What is the biggest misconception that investors have about direct mail today? And what do you have to say to them?
So I would say one of the most things that we usually hear is, "Oh, it's so expensive,"
Yeah.
and it doesn't work. Well, yeah, it is, especially if you go with that spray and pray approach,
Right.
where you kind of just go, "Hey, I want to do it everything the cheapest way." Right. So
Mhm.
you go get the cheapest list you can find. You go and you pick out the cheapest mailer, the one that
Mhm.
looks best for you.
Yeah.
Great. So then what you're doing is taking a shotgun approach at it.
Yeah.
That's not what we do here. That's
Right.
what we typically do is we kind of go over like, hey, what is your market? Your market plays a big factor in all of
Right.
this. You know.
So I mean, it absolutely makes sense, right? Instead of sending a bunch of really cheap, junky mailers all over the countryside, like let's get really focused, right? And that's
Mhm.
what I love about direct mail, because if I only want 3 bedroom, 1 bath, 1,200 square foot houses in these 5 zip codes, we can do that. You can do that. You can absolutely target those and just go after the people that you want, right? Instead of just
Yeah.
everything that you get with PPC.
I mean,
Who knows?
you can get as micro and as granular as you want to be, and we can
Yeah.
get more of that sniper approach.
Mhm.
Like I have some of my clients that do the ADU approach,
Mhm.
where we're
Oh,
looking
yeah.
for anything that has 5,000 plus square footage on a lot size. Stuff that where we can find those properties that have stuff on the back end, so we can
Right.
build those ADU units, especially if you're on the West Coast. A
Yeah.
lot of that hasn't gotten to the Midwest or to the East Coast yet, but
Mhm.
it's coming.
Right. All right. Well, let's jump right in and go a little bit deeper. So, for
Mhm.
somebody who maybe has not done direct mail before, what does a smart like beginner campaign look like? Like, what is the list? What's the messaging? What should they look for a budget?
Well, I would say, for somebody just starting off, right? So if like there's a couple different approaches. If you're somebody you're trying to get 2 to 3 deals per month, you're going
Right.
to have a little bit different of approach than somebody who's very new.
Mhm.
Smaller budgets, say like $500 or $1,000,
Yeah.
and they're wanting to get a deal every single quarter, right?
Yeah.
So if we're going to be going at more of, hey, we have a smaller budget, what does that look like for me? Let's put your hands in the professionals that have been tracking all this stuff like us.
100%.
There's no other company out there that can say, hey, we have KPIs inside each and every market in all
Right.
50 states. And what we do is we utilize that information that we've gathered to give you guys a strategic advantage of
Mhm.
knowing what's working inside your market. So when we talk about lists, like, hey, right now, these are the kind of lists that we need to go after because they're gonna be the most highly sought after
Mhm.
targets that we're gonna can, and
Right.
they're gonna be the cheapest that we can for you at your budget, right?
Right.
Like a lot of people like going after those pre-foreclosures, those probates and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then how do we find, hidden data? There is hidden data out there that most people don't understand.
Mm.
There's certain filters that where if you put them in certain sites and
Mhm.
things along those lines, you lose out on records.
Oh,
Well,
really?
we are able to find those because we know how to find them.
Yeah. How long have you guys been doing this? Like forever, right?
Well, we're a 33-year-old company going on 34 years here.
Wow.
And so we've been in it a very long time.
Yeah.
When we first started this, it was back when I don't know if you are familiar with Memphis Invest with Ken Clogan
Yeah. I
Sr.
know them very well. Yeah.
And yeah, dad and I, we were all part of that, brought in my uncle. And, then, we started hearing in his rooms that, hey, direct mail wasn't working there. And what we found out was just, typically about 80%, 85% of people were just doing it wrong. The same
If you do it
approach.
wrong, it's never going to work, right?
Exactly. So, what we end up doing is we started tracking everything we do, whether it's a list, whether it's a mail type, the market that it's in. A lot of that stuff plays in a factor, because if you were to send in, say, something like an offer mailer inside, Arkansas, you're going to get yelled at. But if
Yeah.
you something more handwritten, more personal to it, you're going to have an easier tone and touch to it.
So how many pieces do you guys send out a year?
Yearly, I mean, we average between 3 and 5 million mailers every single month.
A month? Holy shit. So
And
60
so
million,
that's,
up to 60
that's
million a year.
40 plus million a year is what we were at.
So what I'm getting with that is, if people are watching this and like, well, are these guys any good? They're sending out a lot, and then you're tracking the results, right? So this is why when you say we understand what works, because you know what's getting hits, right? And what your clients are having
Exactly.
success
So
with.
what we typically do is we put unique phone numbers on every single campaign. And so that allows us to track, hey, if it's a certain list, if it's a list from our REI Smart, if it's a list that you bring to us from like PropStream or DataFlick or any of those other sites, we're able to track that and know inside, and we can show you from other campaigns, hey, in this market, PropStream didn't do well, but in this market, REI did well, or this market list source is better. Audantic. So we're able to go. So it's not always about us. It's about how do we make you better, right?
Yeah.
I don't care if you're utilizing our data or not. Of course, I want you to, but
Right.
at the end of the day, I want you to succeed. I want you to be with us for the next 10 to 20 years,
Right.
and to help you financially get to where you want to be at, to grow that portfolio. Or if you're like, I just want to have like 8 flips in a year or 20 wholesales in a year, what is your goals? Well, that's what we're going to talk about and help you figure out and get you there.
Nice. So when I call you and get set up with you, you guys can pull the list, or if I have a list, I can bring it to you and we can figure it out. And that's amazing. So briefly, you talked about markets and all of that. Like how, because this is the popular thing, how exactly are you guys using AI to really refine that data? And, for me as the investor, what does that unlock? Like, how does that help me and really set you guys apart?
So there's a couple of seniors that we have in the office. We've been testing a bunch of different AIs over the years. And we decided that, hey, we have one guy in particular who's really AI, not AI, I shouldn't say AI driven, but he's IT specialist, right? Comes from that kind of a background. His family has always been investing. And then he ended up stumbling upon our position here as coaches. And so we've gathered a lot of the seniors together, and what we've done is we get a lot of anecdotal data from a lot of our customers. We also have REI Complete that is the whole done for you service with the mail aspect, then our team screening, qualifying, and then you deal with the qualified calls. And so we keep track of all those KPIs and those metrics because we have all those phone numbers, and then our clients will give us all of their deals. And what I can do is I can take that list of deals. It doesn't matter if it's 3 or 300, and I can pop them into our AI system. And what it does is it creates an avatar for you of what are the properties that you're converting, which ones, you'll have a percentage of, hey, 86% is going to be a 3-1 with over 1,200 square footage with a build year over 1950. Okay. And then there's other ones where it's going to tier us down. And so the AI that we've created utilizes a lot of that information that we've collected and that we've pumped into it, especially response rates and stuff like that. But it's a brainchild in itself that it's still learning. And what it does is so like David, for you, right? Like it'll sit there and go, because, hey, in Tennessee, this is where your most predominant, zip codes are for you, what you've closed so far. These are where you should be targeting the most. And then what it does is, so like, think of like, for instance, I'll use Missouri because that's where we're located. We're located in the center of the United States, so it's easier wherever we're mailing out to.
Right.
But two major cities, St. Louis and Kansas City, right? There might be something going on, publicly with like government restrictions and stuff like that in St. Louis that might not be going on in Kansas City, because like Prop 19 out in California, that is something that takes an effect. So it takes the general market into effect. But if we also then look at like within St. Louis, like you can go St. Louis City, St. Louis County, you got St. Charles out there. So there's other counties that are all around it. And what it does is it'll split out each one of them into a geofencing. And
Oh, wow.
it'll take each one of those, and even it gets as granular as I've had it to where I just was pulling a list today where I think it was like 100 something zip codes, and it grouped them all together. And there was a couple of them where it was only like one or two, just because it didn't match up
Right.
for it. And basically what we can do is once we get the stacked list, whether it's something that you're providing or we're providing for you, we can run it through it, and then it takes your market into effect. But
Mhm.
I think what the most powerful thing that it takes into effect is telling it what your disposition strategy is. But also
Wow.
after you've put in your avatar, so I know what your avatar is. So when I put your avatar into there, it's
Mhm.
gonna, so anything outside of that bubble, it's gonna rank it lower in the scale. But if it falls under your bubble and it's rated it as, because it's going to put it through like 30 different demographics
Mhm.
of maybe they have double mortgage and their combined household income and the numbers just don't make sense, liens on a property, stuff like that,
Yeah.
debt collectors. It's going to identify and red flag those ones
Mhm.
that are the most motivated from that list. And so we can take that list, the cream of the crop off the top, and get more of a target approach to it.
So what that means for you guys that are listening is you do not have to spray and pray. You can say, I've got a $700, a $500, a $2,000 budget. And what Adam's going to do is pull that list and make sure that it is only hitting the deals that have the highest likelihood of conversion, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Nice. I love that. And you mentioned earlier about a phone team.
Mhm.
So tell me about your phone team, how it works, what makes it so effective, and what are they doing different than like the average follow-up system that maybe you could pay for or that your own team might be doing? What makes your guys, just absolute
So
assassins?
most people, when they hire VAs, what do? They got to train them,
Yeah.
right? So that's one of the hardest things that we see most people have to deal with is, and so a couple of years ago, we purchased a company. Excuse me, purchased a company called REI Vault that we rebranded ourselves, and then implemented a lot of the things that we like doing
Yeah.
inside of there. And so what it is you get the REI print mail
Mhm.
with this phone service and a CRM and everything. I mean, you don't have to use the CRM. You can
Yeah.
definitely API with yours. But our team, what's going to happen is we'll send out all the mail for you. Let's say that, hey, you're a busy guy, David.
Mhm.
You still want to go into wholesale, but
Yeah.
hey,
Maybe you got a
you
job.
don't you don't
Maybe you're
have the
working.
time. You don't have the
Right.
time. So what happens is for 6 days a week, so you get that extra day. Most people, if you're hiring, you get only for 5 days, and
That's
Monday
true.
through Friday, and they're going to be answering from what, 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
So our team answers from 7 a.m. Eastern to all the way to 7 p.m. Pacific. That's 14 hours a day of coverage.
Oh.
And what we've also tracked is you only have really about like a 2% of people that call after that period.
Mhm.
And it's usually West Coast. And if it's somebody at like 9 o'clock, it still goes into a recording right now. We're playing
Yeah.
around with some other AI stuff
Yeah.
that where we're going to be 24/7 with that. But the beauty behind it is our team, they connect on 80% of calls. Whereas
Really?
most
Cool.
investors, that's where their biggest holes are because their team's
Yeah.
not big enough, or maybe you're on a phone call with somebody else.
You miss
Well,
it.
our team, you're the best investors from what we've gathered, and this is names like that you might recognize, like Parker Styles,
I know,
where
Parker.
they had a 45% answer rate. He's one of the best.
Yeah.
And there's other ones where I had a guy who didn't tell me this until 3 months after our campaign started. He's over in Germany, and he's like, "Yeah, but they're calling in for me at like 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning." I go, "How
Yeah.
is that possible? You're working in Cincinnati."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Well, I'm in Germany." I go, "Bro, this is something I needed to know
You
from
should
the
have told me that,
start."
like, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so when we turned him on that first month, $50,000 wholesale assignment fee. And I was literally at Keller Williams when he called me about that. But
Mhm.
so our team, the way it's built up, like I said, 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. But the best part about it is they're relentless in the follow-up. So they're going to re-engage with them indefinitely until they get them qualified. And we've had people where they've been qualified 2 years down the road. And the investors, like, hey, when they go back to look at it, it was a call that they had back in March of 2023.
Yeah.
So it's for investors like us, right? Where we see success is in having good systems and processes set up for yourself, having a quality team, having a quality follow-up process. That's where the money's made.
No, 100%. So, well, let's talk about this.
Mhm.
So, people they're going to want to know like what is a realistic response rate from direct mail,
Mhm.
and like how should we, sort of measure that success just beyond the calls, like in the KPIs that you're tracking. Is there some measurement to this many calls, this many conversations, and then this many deals? How does that all work?
So, and that's kind of where we created a lot of this stuff, kind of figuring that out, so we can
Mhm.
give our expertise of, hey, this is what it's going to take inside your market.
Yeah.
As you know, each market's different, right? So if we're talking about, LA, Southern California, that's going to be a lot different if we're talking about Des Moines, Iowa. So national average is about a 0.5%. You're going to range anywhere from that 0.3 to that 0.6 range.
Hmm.
But what we've seen over time as we grow,
Hmm.
as we utilize the AI gets a little better for you. We start
Right.
figuring out what your avatar is. Then what happens is you start lowering your cost per lead and your cost per deal over time.
Mm.
We did that for some pretty big names in the industry like Tiffany and Josh
Yeah.
in Ohio, where they were kind of skeptical at first when they heard about us, and then when we came in there and just proved it.
Mhm.
It's that's what it's about for us. We take the data that we've collected and we make data driven decisions.
Right.
We're not just guessing with your marketing.
Mhm.
And that's most areas where we've actually been able to start increasing, like in Florida, in some areas like Jacksonville and Orlando, I was getting a 1%.
Mm.
That's very hard to do these kind of days.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff that where we help you guys see better results.
Mhm. So even at 1% though, because direct mail is so inexpensive, that still works out to be cheaper than, a $200-300 PPC lead
Well,
by
yeah, I
far.
mean, so you're getting these inbound leads that are about, somewhere. I've seen people have as low as like Brandon Brittingham. He's had it as low as like $60 per lead, and
Whoa.
he's closing one out of every ten calls.
Mhm.
Like his team's dialed in. And there's other people that, depending on your market, your cost per lead could be about $200. On average, it's about, I would say, 1 to 1.25 is
Okay.
what we've seen.
Nice. That's awesome. So for guys, for you people that are saying direct mail is too stupid, that's or too expensive. One more time. For those of you that are saying direct mail is too expensive, it's absolutely crazy.
Mhm.
These are amazing, amazing response rates. So, why is it that you think people are just saying direct mail is dead? Is it just they just think it's like the old timers did direct mail? I mean, what
Hey,
do you think that is?
so a lot of people have like issues with talking to people. I think a lot of it is they're not, yeah, they buy all these coaching groups and all
Mhm.
of that, and
Yeah.
they're great on giving them tons of coaching and information. But what they don't understand is we are coaches in ourselves. We
Mhm.
have been doing this for a very long time, and we have the ability to coach you on, hey, some of our best like people like where like I had a land guy that was like, yeah, I'm getting a lot of people that are talking to me about inherited properties and I'm just struggling. And I said, well, what are you struggling with? I go, that sounds perfect. And he's like, yeah, they kind of, don't want to get rid of it. And I said, okay, well, I go, did they ask him, what did say if you inherited from your grandpa,
Yeah.
you got to, and he goes, oh, my grandpa used to go hunting there all the time. Oh, when was the last time you went hunting? Oh gosh, it was probably still when he was still alive. I said,
Yeah.
well, then you need to lean on that and be like,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of some of that stuff where you just have to ask the right questions, find their pain point. And I think
100%.
so many people are so new to this that where they don't follow through with a lot of that kind of stuff, creating a relationship with the people, finding out where their stress is and help them understand that I'm here to offer you a solution.
Right. That's what we're here. We're here to help. Absolutely. I mean, I tell people that all the time. Our job as investors is, to help these people out of these situations. All right. Final question here. What
Mhm.
do you think is the number one mistake that investors are making with direct mail if they're not using you? Right. What are the things that are silently killing their campaigns?
The silently killing their campaigns is going with the literally the cheap route off the start.
Yeah.
So when you go with, hey, if I'm going to buy a TV that's cheap, or if I buy, we've done it plenty of times. Why do you not go with, cheap phone service or something like that where they're crappy phones?
Mhm.
You get what you get when you're going with the cheapest route.
Yeah.
What other investors who we've taught over time is we're not going to be the cheapest, but
Yeah.
we're going to be the most effective.
Right.
And our prices, they're dictated because of we put all that extra effort where we're going to hold your hand through the entire process. And so instead of going for the cheap mailer and the cheap list, why don't you go with a high quality list and know that the mailers are going to work inside your market?
Right. And that's so important because, guys, at the end of the day, every dollar that goes out, whether it's a dollar out of your pocket or off your American Express, like it needs to be used productively, and you want it bringing back as many leads as you possibly can. So, I get it if you're brand new and you're not ready for mail and you got a $200 a month budget, handwrite some yellow letters, but do something. But once you get a deal or two done.
Yeah, I've told people like, hey, have your kid take finger painting just on a letter. I've had people that do that and it works.
Sure. And that works when you have nothing else going on, but that doesn't work when you start getting busy.
Yeah, and realistically, to get 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 of those out, and your kids can be like, "Mom, I'm getting really tired of doing."
I love it. Well, guys, listen, this is absolutely amazing. You need more than one source for your marketing. So if you're looking to grow, and you want to finish out 2025 strong and kick off 2026, go to easyreimail.com. That is going to take you to Adam. And Adam, what happens when they go to the site and I guess they get signed up? They're going to have a call with you or one of your coaches?
So what'll happen is they'll hop on a free marketing call with us where we'll talk about and break down their market, have discussions with them. Like, I want to know about you first and foremost. I want to know how your systems are built. What does your team look like? What market we're in? What have you done lifetime? And what do you want to be at? Right. And then we're going to talk about, hey, who we are, what we do, how to master the 5 key elements of direct mail marketing, and how you see better results and what we're going to do for you. And then we're going to have monthly meetings every single month going over that. We're not just, hey, thanks for for your money. 3 months later, let's have a conversation. How do we do? No, I want to know how we're doing through that campaign, and we're going to make decisions as we go through. So we know that we're servicing you the best.
Love it. Guys, easyreimail.com. Go there. Get set up with Adam and his team. They are the absolute fucking most dominant players in the direct mail space, and they have lots of different options. And you've heard them; they can do all kinds of different budgets. So, Adam, thank you so much for coming on today, man.
Thanks
I look forward to having you back, and I really want to explore some of these things really in more detail.
Definitely, can't wait.
Awesome. Talk to you soon.
You too as well.